Thank you, Justine. Thank you for having us, giving us the opportunity to talk about, as you said, the future of charging. And why are we here and why did we think that this is worth talking about? Because the unique thing about this is that this is a great and probably the best example of two companies really changing their way of acting and really partnering up together to solve the next level of challenges that we are facing by getting ourselves from looking at Germany, 1 million of electric vehicles now to 15 million of electric vehicles in just 7 years. And there's a couple of opportunities and challenges that we need to tackle, and the best way, and potentially the only way to tackle this is by brands and companies coming together and partnering really up. And in the spirit of this, I'm very happy that it's not just me from E.ON Drive, but also Andreas from BMW here with me to explain to you what we're doing it, how we're doing it, and how this is going to ultimately allow us all to, on the mobility side, get to a net zero. Andreas.
Happy to be here. So we said we're going to start with a little bit of history. So what's your first experience when it comes to charging?
Which is, my first experience with charging is a while ago. I know that yours is even longer ago, but when I started to work in electric mobility and actually drive an electric vehicle, the maximum charging speed that was sort of on the horizon at the time was 50 kilowatt. And now we are talking, Jörg just talked about the megawatt charging and sort of the incredible speed over the last 7 years. And over the last 7 years, I myself have driven more than 100,000 kilometers of pure electric driving. So I've been in every charging situation that you can imagine to be in. But the good thing is, and this also I guess was just discussed by Jörg, it is very easy now. So we've created an environment where with the current amount of cars you can drive electric without any loss of comfort. I would even argue the opposite, that it's more comfortable now. But now again it's from 1 to 15. But Andreas, when was yours first?
It was about 13 years ago. I was sitting in Beijing, China, responsible for business development for BMW, and we brought the first 50 Mini E's, electric Minis, to China. It took us 3 months to negotiate with our landlord, with the energy company, to get 3 wall boxes installed under the BMW headquarters in the parking garage. I'm very happy that this is much easier today, and it's much easier for our customers because we have a partnership with E.ON in place.
So, getting wall boxes or getting charging infrastructure to the places where they need to be is one thing that everybody requires and is need to be working on. But again, to really think about what we are now bringing in together is to do much more than just provide a plug. We are looking to, together with BMW, to really make the best out of these two technologies, a car and an energy system, to come together to ultimately solve the next level of challenges to get to the mentioned 15 million of cars. And just quickly, who are sort of the perspectives of E.ON Drive and BMW in this? If you look at E.ON Drive, what we are really set out to do is ultimately to make charging and driving electric vehicle radically simple. That's basically what we are really striving towards by making it in a way that you don't need to think about it. That's ultimately there, and you get the best out of the vehicle and the opportunities that an electric engine and a battery gives you. And this is by us looking at providing the modular parts of what is required, so box installation, consultation, obviously the green energy and the management with it, and helping customers along the way to do this. And with this coming with the heritage and the deep experience around energy, we've been looking for finding ways to really make the energy system and the energy transition work hand in hand with the car side of the game. Because if I'm just the plug, I am basically agnostic to what the car does, and vice versa. We can skip all of that and actually talk about the car side. Andreas.
Thanks, Matthias. So why am I here today? Of course, charging is one of my key business areas I'm responsible for, but why? First of all, BMW is committed to achieving the 1.5 target. We've been the first German OEM to join the business ambition for 1.5 degrees Celsius and to set a target, a commitment to be climate neutral by 2050 with a more detailed plan what to achieve until 2030. This has been acknowledged also in the financial community with a AA rating by MSCI ESG, and ESG targets play a key role in our management system as well. How do we get there? First of all, battery electric vehicles are one key element in achieving a better CO2 position for a car manufacturer. And that includes all the scopes in terms of ESG 1 to 3, right? How do we do this? By selling electric cars. We offer electric cars in every segment, basically. You can buy an electric Mini, the smallest vehicle we have on offer today, and you can also, if you're lucky enough, buy a Rolls-Royce Spectre, a Rolls-Royce that's fully electric. And in between, we have all electric offers in all the key segments. A 3/4 series. As of this year, the 5 series is fully electric. The the 7 series is available as a fully electric car. The X1 is an iX1, the iX3, and also the iX. So also all the big market segments, small to large, have been electrified up to now and already. And we're still keeping the foot on the accelerator. We're going to bring more electric cars to the market. Mini convertible has come to the market this year. The i5 gets the full lineup. Even the i5 Touring will be available. 7 Series Protection, security vehicle, also as a fully electric car, and also the iX2, the sporty brother of the iX1, is going to come to the lineup. So we are really increasing the lineup, and of course, going electric means people buying electric cars, and we have the emotional offers in the market already. That means our BEV share is going to increase, right? This year, it's going to be about 15%. That's the target for this year. 15% of all the cars we sell worldwide are going to be fully electric. And by the way, fully electric also includes hydrogen with BMW. We're being ready for this technology. There's an opportunity here, but I will not go into much detail today. Next year, every 5th car we sell is going to be fully electric. Then every 4th, every 3rd car in 26, and before 2030, we will sell more than half of our vehicles as fully electric cars. So that is really a commitment that contributes to achieving the ESG targets. How does charging come into play here? Well, charging is the key enabler for going electric. You could say charging is a key detractor to not go electric, but we are working together to make it a pro argument for the car. Charging is solved. There's a lot to be gained with charging. That supports BEVs and BEVs, and that, at the end of the day, supports our sustainability target. This is why charging is so important. You could say home charging is solved. You can order a wall box at home. There's a broad offer. BMW obviously offers wall boxes. E.ON helps with the installation. Let's say for now, home charging is solved. Then next step, how do you charge on the go? BMW charging in Europe also has you covered. We have more than 500,000 charge points in our network of BMW charging. All the energy you charge with BMW charge is green energy, right? Across Europe, 29 countries, fixed prices. No surprises when it comes to paying for the public charging, and roaming across 29 countries, by the way, without any roaming charges. Roaming charges are zero. You just get, as a BMW charging customer, the local price for the energy. And that is deeply integrated into the car. We have it deeply integrated in our My BMW app. We win prizes 2 in a row with AutoBuild, and we are confident that also this year we will have a good position here. But coming back to home charging, I mean, is it solved or is there some potential? Matthias?
Is it solved? That's the question. It is solved in the way that the amount of cars that are on the road now, if they can, usually have the opportunity to charge at home. But again, we want to now get from, just looking at Germany, from the 1 million cars to the 15 millions in 7 years. And in the way that we're doing this so far, starting with the challenge and coming to the opportunity later, this is not going to just simply work. So we can't just add 14 million plugs somewhere without any intelligence in there. So what we are looking at, and we call this connected home charging, i.e. we add a couple of layers of intelligence into how, when, and where energy is really flowing, assuming and requiring that the car is plugged in, to ultimately really allow for integrating and making it possible for 15 million cars to be on the road and be charged. How do we do that? This connected home charging has a couple of layers. The first one is that it's really about if you are in a situation where you have your own PV system, where you generate at home, that basically the way that charging is being managed and intelligently identified is maximizes the amount of PV generated power that gets to you into your car. And why is this important? This is important for two reasons. The first one is, this is at the moment the only, if not the best way to be 100% sure that it is green energy, because it has never left your system, right? It runs from your PV into your car, and you're 100% sure that it is green. Secondly, it allows us to actually charge a car without interfering with the network. So this is the best way for us to allow for more cars to be in the same infrastructure, because it doesn't affect the infrastructure that much. However, it doesn't stop there, because ultimately we do need to, first of all, for all the individuals that don't have a PV and can't install a PV, is to still sort of charge the car from the grid. And here load optimization comes in. This is again to address the challenge of getting more and more cars to work in the energy system by us, from a grid operator perspective or from other players, to send signals to the car based on the preferences that the customer has defined, right? Obviously the customer will be able, in this case, in the BMW app, to identify that I need to have that amount of range and that amount of time, to basically identify when to charge and when not to charge. And this then also, on the one hand, addresses the challenge of grid congestion, but, and this is sort of the beauty of this, is also is an opportunity for customers for driving electric and having an electric vehicle to become more affordable. Because I can, and it is possible to then basically define charging when prices are low or potentially even negative, so even making money with this. And this is the cost optimization of this. Now, none of this likely is really new, right? We've talked about this for some time, and now there's two differences here. First of all, we're doing this for real. And secondly, for this to really work, it is essential that the energy side, so me and the technology and the products, really speaks hand to hand and is collaborating with the car. Otherwise, we are sending potentially conflicting messages. Messages are not being sort of really taken over. And that's why it's essential that we are able to work with BMW on this and make this possible for BMW drivers. Go ahead.
Maybe to make it a bit practical, if you think about the average customer in Germany, they will drive about 40 to 50 kilometers a day. Depending on how dynamic they drive, they will need to recharge about 10 kilowatt hours every day. And you park the car overnight. That means you have like 10, 12 hours time to recharge 10 kilowatt hours. That gives you quite some room to maneuver here. Yeah? On a typical day, many customers also don't need their cars to be fully charged. It's absolutely enough if the battery is half charged, right? Because you're only driving 50 kilometers. But maybe someday you really want, I'm going to drive to Frankfurt from Munich at 7 a.m. and I want the car to be charged to 100%. So this is what the customer will do in the My BMW app. We know this quite well today. We have the preconditioning feature. My electric car is preconditioned every morning, and when I leave work, I precondition the car so that I enter a nice and climatized car. So our customers are very much used to this, to doing this in the app. So we can take care, as BMW, we focus on our customer and on their respective mobility need. 50% is enough most of the time, 100% on a specific day. And this information we can hand over to our partner E.ON, and E.ON now can help the customer work with this and make sure that the charging happens when it's green, when it's cheap for the customer, so we can take advantage of prices. And this is what brings value to the customer, right? Cooperating between E.ON and BMW.
And the trick here really is that we're doing all of this without the customer having any loss of comfort, right? So ultimately, I mean, for those of you who've been here yesterday, in the past it was always described that becoming green and net zero is usually something that you have to give something. You either have to spend more money, or you have to lose some comfort, or you have to basically compromise. And what we are trying to do to really make this a mass adoption, to really get this into scaling, is to do this in a way that the customers can define how comfortable they want to be, what kind of things they want to achieve, and then the magic happens without them having any loss of comfort. So we take those signals and those parameters that customers defined and then optimize against those three layers that I've mentioned earlier. However, and this is the piece that I've jumped over, we not only then optimize between car and charging, right? Ultimately, we take the car as one of the biggest assets in the home, but then optimize the home against all of this. Because obviously, as we look at further electrification of also heating and cooling with heat pumps, if you look at all the other consumptions in the home, it's getting more and more electrified. So there is more also ultimately sort of volume to work with to optimize against. So that in the end, this is, without the loss of comfort, an opportunity for customers to save money, to optimize themselves, and to really take sort of benefit of the opportunities that present themselves with these new technologies. Now, just one thing about sort of Germany. The one thing that we need for this is smart meters. So whenever you meet your local politician, tell them that they should work for us getting smart meters. So this is stuff that we can already do way better in Sweden and in the UK and in Italy. It always hurts my soul that we've sort of lost that race. So whenever you go out, sort of try to convince them of it. Sort of political speech over. So ultimately, what I sort of was trying to say is this technology, and especially if car and energy system work behind the curtain seamlessly, we are able to provide all of this with having the customer really centrally in mind, i.e. the customer does not compromise on his or her requirements and needs, to then ultimately create a better sort of CO2 and net zero perspective, because we are really locally generating, optimizing energy, and we are able to also make the best out of the grid energy. If it happens to be that at a certain period of time there is no real renewable energy in the system because we have sort of a windy, sunny day and it's just there, then we can optimize charging at that moment of time. So that ultimately it is this carefree but still saving proposition that customers have and can get. But this is only step one, right? Because at the moment we only talked about the car as a consumer, like something that takes energy. But this sort of phenomenal word that keeps on buzzing around if you're in the e-mobility bubble of bidirectional charging is sort of the next level of what we will be able to do with this collaboration and with this setting. What is bidirectional charging? Sort of in plain terms, you're using the battery not only to charge the car but also the rest, right? So ultimately is the ability for a house to only pull energy from the battery that is in the car and not only give energy into it. What does that mean? I mean, ultimately, this gives every home a huge lever to optimize energy consumption against price or against CO2, because generally, sort of on average, a stationary battery that some households buy has 10, 11, 12 kilowatt hours of size. A normal car has 70, 80 kilowatt hours, so it's a factor of it. So it's a huge lever that you can pull by taking everything that we just did, but adding a couple of factors of flexibility on it, because you can feed back into the grid and also use energy to power your home if your PV doesn't generate. And to make this a bit more real, I mean, I know that this is being discussed for some time. We also, in collaboration, have equipped 10 of our customers with what they need to be bidirectional, i.e. they got a special bidirectional i3, they got a bidirectional wallbox, they had a PV, and they had everything that's required to really test this full. And the result is that the way that we've measured this is how autonomous, how autark is the household, i.e. how independent am I from the grid. And by having a PV, in this average, and it depends on where you live, it's less in the north and more in the south, you have about 20% autarky. Right? So 20% of the time throughout the year, you don't need the grid. With a bidirectional car, we get this to 51. So I'm more than doubling my ability to really make myself independent of what is happening in the grid by simply having this capability. And this is real. These are not sort of lab things. These are normal customers that use this car as their normal way of commuting. So there's huge opportunities in there to ultimately optimize this.
And maybe if I may add, and this comes on top to the car being operated at near zero CO2 in the operations phase, right? You use green energy from the grid, from the house to charge the car. You drive on green energy, and then you get something on top for the house. So this is a net benefit of the car that happens outside the car.
I didn't remember that we had to start on this. So these are the numbers that I just talked about, right? So ultimately, and this also puts a bit of a strain on this, I mean, this standard stationary battery that comes on top doesn't add that much of further autarky or sort of flexibility, because the battery of the car is already so huge. But ultimately, this allows us to really, really get into taking all of this strain, and this is the opportunity, away from the grid. So we really get congestion out, and we optimize and maximize the use of own generated energy at your home to really get sort of the 100% green energy that you look for. So that ultimately, I mean, it goes without saying by now that electric mobility only makes sense when it's powered by green energy, right? Otherwise, we're not really helping ourselves on the CO2 side. So that ultimately, what we bring together is a car that allows for all of this, is the customer experience on the car side to really sort of make sure that customers continue to get also in an EV what they expect of BMW. So this Freude am Fahren. And then add all the different components that are required to do all of the things that we just talked about. So the white wall box, the PV system, the intelligence to ultimately allow for this, to really sort of have this lever working for us.
And the good news is you can buy it today, right? This year we bring the i5 to the market, the perfect electric driving machine. This offer together with E.ON to get you in and the managed charging will also be available this year, and this is really it's today, it's not about the future. Bidirectional charging is around the corner. There are still some technical things to be done to make it a mass market product. We're working on this, but even with the one directional charging, managed charging integration into your solar system at home, you can achieve a lot already today, and all that driving a highly emotional and fun-creating car.
So this is what we brought, and I guess the key thing is, and that's I think also, I mean, this is I think the third or the fourth time that I'm here, and we've always talked about that the way for us to tackle climate change is on the one hand to innovate, to have sort of startups to come with new ideas. But the other key requirement for us to ultimately get to the net zero is that established big blue chip corporates find new ways to really get serious around collaborating and finding new ways of tackling it. And I think this is now real, right? This is the best example for it, for two big corporates that come out of different worlds, different sectors, to basically join forces to make this work. And that's what we're here to stand for. So thank you for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mathias, Andreas. I cannot wait for bi-directional charging, because I will literally run out and buy myself a brand new BMW just for that.
Excellent.
Definitely. Aside from, you mentioned the collaboration between your two companies. Aside from smart meters, what has been the biggest challenge in making this partnership or collaboration and combination of resources possible?
I think, to be honest, I mean, the biggest hurdle, unfortunately, is very boring, in that ultimately IT systems need to talk with each other, right? So that's not, I mean, that's what ultimately needs to work to get the seamlessness to make the optimization. But the good thing is that is what was the easy part of getting the collaboration going. Because the easy part is that we didn't need to convince ourselves that this is the only way, that this is the right thing to do, that this is where we both create this infamous win-win-win, so win-win and customer win situation. Right. And based on that, you also will be able to face all the challenges that there are and that will come and continue to be there.
Yeah. So I think we had a very good start in terms of joint mindset. That helps a lot. Technical innovation is needed here, but I think we're on a good way here. But to make it really easy, simple, joyful for the customers, this is a challenge that we're tackling together. And I think, as you will see, we have quite some good ideas how we can achieve simplicity and joy of use for our customers as well.
Excellent. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. I have a question on the technical challenges you have mentioned. I'm an engineer by background, so I'm curious to understand what is it that is delaying the introduction of the bidirectional? Is it system level technology? Is it power device technology? I run a company, power devices, so hence the question.
It is, I think it is for us to find, I mean, the real challenge we have now is actually to prove and bring to market a commercial model. Right, so the technology in terms of, I mean, in this case, it's CCS, DC plug to communicate take the communication between charger and car. That's proven and that's been around for some time. I think what we've also wanted to prove with this example is that there's commercial value, i.e. that customers are willing and should be incentivized to use this. But there's more work to be done around this because many of those components that we are requiring for this are still, compared to the sort of conventional ones, cost prohibitive because we are sort of lacking the scale, right? So there's still a factor of 3, 4, 5 between a normal wall box and the bidirectional. And this is what we need to work on to really make this attractive for customers to say, yes, I'm going to do it. So that's the main challenge at the moment, rather not really the technical.
I would add for BMW as a global company, we always try to create products that work in the world, and integrating with all kinds of grids in the world is a challenge in itself. Yeah, and I think with E.ON we have a great partner for Europe at least. Yeah.
True, Europe.
Hi. I would like to ask 2 questions actually. One that I also asked before, but I didn't really receive an answer. So, I mean, we talked about charging and discharging the vehicle, and so as asked before, does this like age the battery, and how much is it a concern? Because you are making money out of it, but at the same time you are losing it because you will have to change the battery sooner. Mm-hmm. And the second one is more about another technology that is, I think it's interesting. It is the battery swapping. And have you took it into account? How do you think? Do you think it will be a feasible solution in the future? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, bidirectional charging makes the battery work a little bit more, right? And you can create scenarios in which this would be an additional strain on the battery. But the art and the science is to organize the bidirectional charging in a way that doesn't happen. This is one of the reasons why I said there is some innovation to be done. I think we have a path on how we can make this work in a way that, of course, we will offer bidirectional charging with the full warranty on the battery. Otherwise, it wouldn't make no sense. But there need to be some mechanisms in place to make that work. That's the first place. Battery swapping.
On this is new, right? So ultimately, we did sort of also commercially run bidirectional sort of programs also for a longer period of time. And there's a lot of things you can do with a battery that allows you to monetize on certain services that don't count as a cycle. So they don't drive battery sort of lifetime. There are things that you can do to really harm the battery, but this is again one of the reasons why we need to work together so that this doesn't happen. Yeah. Right? So ultimately, and that's why it's important that we talked about the customer defining the pocket of what the energy system is allowed to do, right? But there's another defining factor is the battery engineers of BMW saying this is what you are allowed to do with the battery so that we can continue to keep up the warranty. But ultimately, there are some question marks because this is new, right? I mean, we haven't run this for 15 years and can tell you now, here's the data set, so just go look it up, right? So, but that's also the cool thing about it, right? So we are pushing boundaries here.
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion on swapping, but you can do that.
Battery swapping has been around as an idea forever, right? It is attractive in some cases, but it also creates an additional constraint on creating cars, especially if you're a big car manufacturer like BMW, where the battery is an integral part of the car. And for the cars that we have in the market, this is exactly how we do it. We make the battery a structural part of the car, and we create a car that is very drivable, has very high quality, and it is part of our car architecture, if you will. charging speeds have been improving and will further improve. And I believe at some point the distinction is not so big.
Andreas, speaking of pushing boundaries, you're taking a vehicle, a motor vehicle, from its primary focus of mobility to being a power generation unit. So it's kind of changing industries in essence. Do you foresee any challenges that would come about from that, maybe pushback from power generation industry or any such?
I believe I would expect the opposite, and what we experience with E.ON as our partner is exactly the opposite, because if you think about one car and one customer, you think about driving patterns, you think about maybe there's some savings on the energy for the car. This is all very nice, interesting, and good for the customer. This is one reason why we do it, right? But if you think it on a larger scale, if you have hundreds of thousands of cars that are connected in an Internet of Things, where you basically create a virtual power plant, right? And you can use the power plant to absorb energy. We know that especially renewables are intermittent. If you have a large fleet of cars that you can say, well, now is the time to really charge, then that provides, let's say, a benefit for grid stability. This is really good. And if you go bidirectional, you can also not only, let's say, shave the peaks, but also help fill the valleys in the curve, right? And peak shaving is something that is at the heart of the first step of intelligent charging. That means also have a big fleet of cars and not charge when energy is scarce or expensive or from the wrong source. So I believe that in this coupling of these sectors, there's a lot of potential, and we are only in the beginning, but we can contribute here.
Sounds really exciting. Do we have any more questions from the audience?
Hello. My question is more about the point you mentioned that normally a car is driven per year 40 to 50 kilometers. Is it then the way, and you mentioned that BMW want to go to the 1.5 global goal, is it then sustainable to think about, okay, now we just will sell cars with EV charging, but all the production, the resources of this will coming, and if I think about the car will roughly drive 1 hour per day, and the rest, you go to Berlin, you see them standing everywhere. Is this idea from BMW to get sustainable, or do you also have concepts for mobility when it comes, for example, to bigger cities, that not everyone needs to have their own car?
Well, there are solutions. I mean, we have customers all over the world in all kinds of living situations, very big cities, small cities, rural areas, different opportunities to go electric. This is one of the reasons why we believe that we need a mix of propulsion technologies for the future. And yes, we are a car company, so we employ 150,000 people across the world producing and selling cars. We do this with the 1.5 degrees target in mind and in commitment, and we bring down the CO2 emission that comes with it in our own plants, in the supply chain, and mainly what we talked about today in the use phase, by making sure that the actual operation of the car is near CO2 neutral. And then comes basically designing for circularity into place, making sure that we regain the raw materials from the cars, so that we believe we make an offer that is in compliance with the 1.5% target and also in accordance with our business model.
Any further questions?
I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the circularity of all these components and how you're going to work with consumers on both the business side and the consumer side to make sure, you guys get the materials back so you're able to recycle them, reuse them, repurpose them, etc.
Well, honestly, I'm not an expert when it comes to circularity. I'm a product manager for cars. Obviously, you can design a car in a way that regaining the materials gets easier, and this is what we do by going mono materials and making designing cars with the circularity in mind. Yeah? And this is what we do. This is also what helps circularity at the end. Then having a car being used for 15 years, going to a number of hands, users, owners, it's not so easy to keep track of the car, but if you make a good offer because you have designed the car for circularity and you can regain a lot from the car, I think that is one way to do this. And the raw materials in the car, they do have their values, and it is also, let's say, financially beneficial to recycle as much as we can, and I believe that will help the cause as well.
Well, thank you very much, Matthias, Andreas. I'm not going to rush out to buy that BMW just now. I will wait for the bi-directional charging.
We'll create a special offer for you very soon.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much also for the questions. It was a pleasure.